What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the Ratchet Motors YouTube channel. We're picking up right where we left off on the last one. We got the new rubber put on those Porsche wheels, and we're getting those bad boys mounted onto our Bug. So tune in. And I could not wait to get these tires mounted here, or these wheels mounted, I should say. So what we went with all around are our Firestone, what are these? The Firestone Indy 500 tires. These are a pretty extreme summer performance tire, but that's what this car is, so it should be perfect for that. And we went with 205 4017s in the front. In the rear, these are a pretty unique size that we had to kind of pick out here based on dimensions. This is a 235 4517. So I knew from initial measurement that we really weren't going to have too much issue with these 205 40s. We have clearance on the inside and the outside, and it looks like we might actually fall right within that fender there. But really, the uncertainty is still around the rear end here. Now, before rebuilding the drums or anything, I'm just going to get those test fit on here and see kind of what we're looking at. And then I can decide again, just a final spacer. I kind of have two stacked up there. I think an inch spacer is going to work. But I didn't have the exact same tire size when I originally tested it. I had bigger tires before, so I'm hoping with the smaller tires I'll get a little more clearance here. So again, we'll start by test fitting the rears. The front's pretty much done with here, so it's just solving those final little fitment issues on the back end. All right, so just like couple small things that happened on camera here before we get back into rebuilding the brakes. So if you look very closely at this front bolt here, the front of those three, I actually flipped it around just to give us a little bit more clearance. We might have gotten some contact there, just any extra clearance we could get. And then the top of the bump stop, I just shaved just a little bit off there. It looks like a lot, but really wasn't all that much, maybe a 1/4 of an inch sliver. Again, just giving us a little bit more clearance on the inside of the wheel there, and that could be the difference between a 25 millimeter spacer or 20 millimeter spacer. It also is the difference between possibly clearing the fender or not. So we're just doing all these little fixes here so we can flip things around. Now the other thing that happened is while I was going into the brakes, everything was pretty good with the exception of both front adjusters on the drums seemed to be seized up. So I actually took them over to my bench here. I got them soaking in Bolt Blaster and like rust penetrant right now. And I'm just going to get those two freed up before I go back into rebuilding the drums. So I'll probably chuck them in the vise here, get them loosened up, maybe chase the threads, make sure all the threads are clean, and then we'll rebuild everything. I was just about to take them apart and tap and everything, and then I remembered I actually have more adjusters from my original front drum brakes that I took off almost a year ago. I still have those sitting in the garage. These adjusters are already in great shape, so I'm not going to bother rebuilding the old ones. I'm just going to take the two off the front since they're exactly the same, and that problem is now solved. So I'm going to put the adjusters back in, and now it's just rebuilding the drums and putting those rear wheels on. All right, so the first thing we actually need to do here is we need to take the hardware for our emergency brake or our parking brake. It's just an extra lever arm here. We got to take it off the old shoe and put it on the new shoe. And everything we're doing here, I already did on the passenger side, but I just like to show it on the driver's side just so we see what's kind of going on here. So we'll move the shoe lever over, or the parking brake lever over to our other shoe. And then I'll partially assemble it on the table here, and then finish everything up on the actual car. right, so this is with this is with the 25mm spacer, so 1 inch. Looks like it's gonna be pretty good, but we might have issues clearancing that bolt, the bolt on the front of the trailing arm. All right, so I'm actually super pumped how this looks. It is a little tight where we had that bump stop as well as where we had that bolt. Now we do have clearance. It's kind of just like my own sanity whether or not I want to add a little more space or not, but I'm going to try taking it out as is because right now we have a pretty good fit with the fender front and back here. So really all I have left to do as far as before we can take this out for a drive is I do need to torque down that axle nut, which is about 300 foot-pounds, I think just under 300 foot-pounds. So that'll be a little bit of work getting that axle nut tightened down. And then I'm gonna do a bolt check on the front because I did notice some cotter pins were left out of my, a couple bolts. So I'm gonna make sure everything's all set in the front and then we can take it out for a spin. Probably the toughest thing on our checklist here before we go out for a ride is getting that axle nut tightened down. So I double checked, 253 foot-pounds. Fortunately, my torque wrench goes right up to 250. And then once you get to the torque, you actually need to tighten until you can align with the castle nut. So we're gonna torque it up to the 250. That's really the toughest thing to do here. Now, I was very foolish, as in very stupid before, and I try to take these off with the car in the air. That's super difficult. I got lucky on one side. I did not on the other. So just make sure you're doing this with the tires on the ground. Now, fortunately, still with these Porsche wheels, we have that cap that just pops up, so I can easily get my torque wrench in there. And the other thing we need to deal in now before we put the front end down is just a little bit of toe in that we have on the passenger side. I've just been eyeballing this alignment, but you can tell pretty clearly that the passenger side is more towed in than the driver. So I'm gonna hop under there again, just eyeball, and then once we have the toe adjusted, we can put the front down, finish the rears, and then take it out for a spin. And you can see here, to adjust the alignment, what we do is we actually loosen those tabs, we break them free from the bolts, and then basically we have a lock nut and our adjuster. So we'll loosen up the lock nut and we'll just start moving this out so it's a little bit longer to get our alignment where we want it here. So that's all we really need to do here. And hopefully once this is all set, we'll move on to the back. All right, so we got everything pretty much back together here. The last step was just those cotter pins and our axle nuts. And I just wanted to show one thing that I suggest here is I bought this cotter pin set off Amazon. It has all different sizes, and now I know no matter what, I always have cotter pins. This is something that we have a lot of these on different steering components and the axle nuts in the rear here. Just having this set means I can always take off these castellated nuts and replace the cotter pin with no problem there. These can be kind of tricky to grab otherwise, so that's why I got this whole kit here. I'll put a link on for the Amazon just in case anyone wants to purchase these. All right, I'm usually pretty positive, pretty optimistic in these videos, but I am completely pissed on this one. All I was doing was torquing down my lug bolts as intended, and in the front here, 3 of the 5 bolt holes stripped. Now I looked at the rotors, I put them back on now. The rotors there barely have any threads in them. I just didn't notice it before because I had enough threads to engage, but as soon as I applied torque, they broke. Like the threads actually stripped in the rotors. So this is like just terrible quality. The rears were all fine, exact same torque, everything worked perfectly fine. This one, 3 bolts, or I should say 3 bolt holes stripped. I was hoping to take the car out and get a couple clips driving it, some outdoor footage, but now I'm gonna have to wait for another rotor to come in because there's not even enough threads here to even fix. Even if I was to tap it, I'd end up with the same problem again. So again, not really happy about that. I'm probably gonna wrap up this video here.
So obviously I'm really disappointed with this. You can see I'm already getting the motorcycle set up because we do have a couple projects we can work on with that bike. But we are gonna try one more thing before we close this video out. I got a 14 by 1.5 tap. I'm gonna try to chase or tap these threads. Hopefully that resolves the problem. I'm not really confident that it will. I already have a new rotor on order. But I figured in the meantime, there's no harm trying it. So I'm gonna try to re-tap the threads, to re-chase those threads. And hopefully we'll get lucky here. Again, 3 of the bolt holes stripped out. I was looking and there's really just not a lot of material for the threads, which is probably part of the problem. So I'm wondering if this just was a rotor that just made it through quality or something like that. I ordered some German ones instead, so hopefully much better quality than wherever these ones came from. But still, we're going to try to fix up those threads and those holes. Really no harm in doing so. If it doesn't work, I'm exactly where I was. If it does work, at least maybe I can take the bug out for a couple of drives before those other rotors show up, which I'm hoping are going to be a much better quality. But here we go. We'll give it a shot. Let's see.
Nope. Nope, as expected. Nothing. No. All right, so that's really everything we have for this video. Unfortunately, we're still waiting for the rotors to show up. So that kind of puts us at a standstill for the bug, but fortunately, we just got all our parts that we need for the Triumph Thunderbird. So probably what you're gonna see in our next video is us finishing up the bug and taking that out for their first drive on our new wheels. And at the same time, you're gonna see us taking out the Triumph for its first ride as well. So all the Triumph really needed was some fork seals and some coolant, and then we can get that out on the road and hopefully quickly sell it so we can recoup some money and start working on our 62 F100. We've got the frame just sitting on the side over here as well. So as always, thank you everyone for joining in. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. Be sure to share with your friends and subscribe for more content.